On this episode, I welcome Cayne, founder of Haven's Kitchen. Her company has been helping people cook, not just follow recipes, since 2012, when she opened the Haven's Kitchen Cooking School in New York City. For 8 years, they've been making cooking more fun and a lot easier, with classes, a cookbook, and their squeezy sauces. They happen to be delicious, take it from me. She has had quite a journey and is sure to make for a fantastic guest. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome, Ali. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Pre-show, we were talking about this pandemic we live in here.
Yep.
And it's hit a lot of us in a lot of different weird ways. And you commented on this being your first time out and like out in the real world.
I know.
So just give me a little background on your business and specifically how things have been going since March.
I mean, I feel like there's a before and an after, and Expo West was sort of like the dividing line. My whole team was out in Anaheim, and the cooking school was having its best year ever, and we had just tons of people booked for events and classes and things. And we were just excited because we were about to launch globally with Whole Foods. And so we were opening up all of the UNFI DCs. And so the plan was great, Expo West, just like rack up all of these accounts because now we can finally distribute to all these stores. And then, things just kind of rapidly unfolded from there. I came back to New York in March and closed the cooking school, and then closed the cooking school permanently, which was just kind of crazy and like very Kafka-esque and just sad and hard. But at the same time, the sauces were taking off and everyone was cooking at home all of a sudden. And so our velocities in the stores that we were in just started going like up and up and up. And even though we weren't necessarily bringing on a ton of new accounts or getting meetings with buyers, buyers were looking for solutions to dinner and, flavor builders and kind of, new condiments that represented different places. So it's been a very, I'd say the highs have been very high and the lows have been very low for the past 8 months. But generally, the sauce business is doing really well.
Right.
So that's fun.
Did you have a major dark moment? Like, what was there like a dark or one that comes to mind as like, this was my darkest moment during this pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I had a team of over 100 people. And I had a bustling building on 17th Street that taught people how to cook, and where, people came for their coffee and for their meetings, and they had their weddings there. And I mean, and then I had all of these people that were looking to me, to make this thing go away, and I couldn't. So that was really hard. And I think getting kind of gobsmacked with like, oh, wait a second, even if we eked our way through this, like we can't not have revenue for 6 months, 8 months, a year. I mean, so I had run them. They were two separate businesses, and they I made them two separate businesses
From the
start. Because one was a growth business with investors, and one was very much just like a dear to my heart brick and mortar business. But it was terribly dark. It was awful.
Right.
Having to tell people that their jobs are gone is just the worst feeling in the world.
Brutal. And is there plans to open back up?
No, I mean, I think that when my first seed round investors, when I was talking to them early on, and they kind of said, okay, so you're running both companies. How are you doing that? How can we be sure that we're giving you money for the sauce company? And I always said, and it was really true, that the cooking school kind of ran itself. I had a really good team. We'd been doing it for years. It was profitable. It was this tidy little thing. And I always said, if it becomes not that, then I'll make a decision. It just happened very abruptly and very quickly that it became, untenable to do it. So,
Yeah, I think you have a unique story because you were sort of running different businesses. I didn't realize that
Right.
they were like distinctly two actual different
Yeah.
businesses, which actually proved probably not positive, but positive in the
Well,
sense of,
it's definitely, I mean, in terms of like, for all of the people out there that are in hospitality or brick and mortar or retail, and they're thinking about how do I pivot into a product, I would definitely 100% say start a separate LLC or C Corp. Like you do not want those two things connected.
right,
And it's fine. We paid rent to the cooking school, and we paid, $1,000 a month for supplies or
smart.
whatever that was.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Yep.
And I think a lot of businesses have pivoted within themselves, but also brick and mortar or food services, and now they're in retail or they're in the e-com world. So sort of having those different structures and different philosophies and even different personnel prove
Totally. Yeah,
beneficial.
and that's the thing. I mean, you need, you need different people at different stages of even the same business. So skills don't necessarily translate from one thing to another. So
Right.
you can't just absorb, a whole team of people into a business that doesn't need that.
Totally.
Um,
So take us back a little bit. So you had the foresight to set them up differently.
yeah.
I read here 8 years. So was the plan to have the sauce line from the start? How late did the sauce line come about?
No. The plan was I went back to school and I got a degree in, this sort of random thing called food studies, which is sort of a third anthropology, a third food policy, and a third sustainability, right? And it was so much fun and it was amazing. And I had an internship at the Green Market, and basically, I just wanted to teach people how to cook because I figured, the most important thing you can do for your personal health, your communities, farm labor practices, the environment, is cook. And New Yorkers weren't necessarily known for their culinary skills. People kept like shoes in the oven and things like that.
Right.
So in 2012, there was this sort of burgeoning, organic farm to table-y kind of thing going on, but people didn't know what to do with food. So I opened Haven's Kitchen, and it was just super fun. I would take people to the farmer's market, and then they would make lunch or make dinner, and people started wanting to get married there and having these brand launch parties there, and it just evolved. And then like 2016, 2017, I'd say that's where like two things started happening. One was I started thinking, okay, this is nice and it's fun and it's good, but we're in a great economy right now. Rent is going to continue to go up. Labor is getting more expensive, and we're not going to be able to keep charging more for food or
Right.
events. So something's gonna have to happen. And I didn't necessarily want to open more locations, but I kind of was like, how's this gonna go? And it's kind of like if you're not growing, you're dying, which is kind of harsh to say, but it's kind of true. So I was thinking, I gotta grow. What do I want to grow here? And then at the same time, I had all of these students in the cooking classes saying, there are these new meal kits and we're trying these meal kits. And I thought it was going to make me more confident. And I thought it was going to help with dinner. And I thought it was going to be amazing. And it ended up kind of being a not great experience. And I feel really guilty. And now I'm anxious about all the boxes that are piling up. And,
Right.
we don't need a meal kit. We just need a good sauce. And that just was like, it kept kind of repeating itself. So I thought, I want to grow the business. There's clearly like a consumer need here. And let's see if I can, do something that kind of kills both birds. And so by that time, I was a professor at NYU where I had completed the master's, and I had all this access to Mintel and to all of this free research. And I started learning about market size and household penetration and all the stuff that I didn't really know about or care about until then. And then we went to fancy food with some sauces and squeezy pouches in 2017. Fortunately for us, John Lawson for Whole Foods was like gung ho. And we had our first PO March of 18, and it's just been growing, exponentially ever since. So
Right.
it's been fun.
Amazing. We had Matt Weiss here,
Yeah.
also a Duke
I
alum.
think he was like building rind in my cafe.
Really?
Yeah. He was there like 4 days a week.
I love that. And he said, but same thing. He had this concept. He went to fancy food. He was still working in investment banking. And like, I just think it's fortuitous that it's in New York, right?
Yeah.
And you can go to it.
Totally.
And you hear about the serendipity of being there, and major buyer is there, and they like it's one of those things of, if you're not in the game, there's no chance of you being successful. Right. And you could easily go. There's probably a lot of stories of people that went and had a dud fancy food.
Yeah, totally.
And I think for value for people that would watch this, certainly in this industry, is like, you got to put yourself in the game.
Well, my daughter's applying to colleges right now. And, we kind of keep having the same mantra. Like, if you don't swing at the ball, you have zero chances of getting a hit. If you swing at the ball, at least you have, some chance of landing on, a base.
Right.
Is that a good baseball?
I like that one.
Thank you.
That was a good one.
You can tell I am not necessarily an athlete.
Well done, yeah.
But it's true. And I think there's also something kind of at this point, almost sweet about like getting a booth and getting a table and like putting out your wares, as opposed to all of these digitally native brands that are doing it completely differently. There's something still sort of like innocent and like homegrown about going to the fancy food show.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's more authentic to the food space, especially coming from where you came from and your backstory prior to the CPG brand. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. A lot of these shows are going to cancel, are being canceled, are not necessarily ever going to be maybe what they were.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be on brands to be a little bit more strategic about what is next, what's the alternative to it, and not sort of waiting on it too long.
Totally. And I feel like we kind of, we got in by the skin of our teeth. Like, I was actually interviewing someone on my podcast yesterday, and she's got a CBD, right? CPG, CBD. She has a CBD brand, and she was saying that, they're in Walgreens and CVS and Ulta, they're in all these retailers, and they see the retailers as almost just like billboards for building their direct to consumer business. And I was like, it's really an interesting way to think about it, right? Because everyone's talking about omnichannel, but the reality is you do need both. And, having those retailers put you on their shelves gives you a lot of credibility. There's so much stuff out there. You can swipe up to buy all sorts of garbage, right? But knowing that brands were vetted by retailers gives them like a little bit of a different something. And so they kind of work together. So even though I don't know what these trade shows are going to look like, I still think that there is very much a place for retail in anyone's strategy.
Totally. Right now, brands are very twisted on direct to consumer.
Right.
They think it's easier. They're like, yeah, you control your margins. You get to, manifest what you want to have happen.
Right. Until Facebook decides to raise their prices, right?
Which is happening right now, and it's very expensive. And I just think my whole thing, I keep saying, and my daughters have been like, it's enough already, which is scary because it's happening at home. But I'm like, don't be so binary about everything. And I think I speak to brands all day long that are just like very binary on their channel, on what social media platforms they should be on. Like, the secret is in the middle.
Yeah. And it goes to like, ecology, right? The key to sustainability is diversity, right? You don't plant one crop. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Right.
And you might make a little more money monocropping for a couple of years, but at the end of the day, it's just not sustainable.
Right.
So that's kind of why I was thinking, like, even back in 2017, I was like, I should probably diversify here if I want this to be successful, or, I want to have a career going forward.
It's a good thing you did.
Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
It's true.
Right? And that's another really good tidbit, is this idea of not having to make these changes when you're in wartime and be a wartime general. First of all, I think a lot of brands are learning, like, they're not built to be a wartime general because the
Right.
economy's been so good for so long. But really having the foresight to make decisions during peacetime and being strategic with a business sense. Maybe that's your grad degree speaking, or just what
I
you've
think
learned
it's
in
my
life.
mom of 5 children speaking.
We're gonna get to
And
that
just,
one for sure.
being
Yeah.
an older founder,
Right.
maybe. And also, I think coming from brick and mortar, like we
Right.
would wait until the right month to buy a new laptop based on our sales and what was coming in the door, and you learn, the idea of spending a lot of money that you don't have is just so foreign. And I understand that for growth and obviously these venture backed companies, and you got to hit the ground running, you got to spend money to make money and all that. But when you manage a brick and mortar space and then you go into CPG, you just naturally care about things like margin and profitability and like running a lean team and, unit economics and things like that, that I don't know that a lot of the digitally native brand founders thought about, A, but B, they were kind of told not to think about. They were just told like top line, top line, top line, and the rest will come out in the wash. And now all of a sudden the zeitgeist is changing and they're kind of like, wait, what? A
Totally.
little bit left sort of confused.
Totally. Yeah. And it's a stark difference. The last person we had in the chair here was maybe 23 years old. And he's fantastic and big fan. We actually work with him, but he doesn't have the scars. He hasn't stepped in the puddles and he hasn't really thought about any of those things.
Right.
And, fortunately different than, our generation is a lot of the things now are available. You can Google, you can listen to podcasts, you can learn
Right.
without having to step in the puddle. We didn't have that back in the day. You sort of went through things and then you learn.
Right.
I think now people are really reeling in this. And so it's very hard now, especially an election year in Q4, to be shifting your business into direct to consumer and
Right.
trying to like run after ads without a team that knows what they're doing.
Well, we're actually literally doing that exactly right now.
Right.
I mean, when we had the actual brick and mortar cooking school, we kind of had D2C, right? Like
Right.
someone would be like, we got an order. We'd have to go down to the basement. We'd like FedEx overnight. It was not something we
You were
advertised.
moonlighting in D2C.
We did not create a flow of like emails. There was no, subscription, nothing. And I'm very happy that we were able, the minute that Expo West was canceled, we knew demos would be canceled and we started digital ads, literally using, because we were on 480 new shelves in Whole Foods across the country with no demos. And that was
Right.
our plan. Like that was the entire marketing plan. So I'm happy to say that we've now kind of figured out digital ads and Instacart ads and using sort of all the different digital levers that we can. But obviously we also need to have a direct business. People need to be able to buy sauce from us directly. And they need to be able to get a subscription to it if they want. And they need to be able, to get cases of it. And so it took us a while to figure out the 3PL and to figure out, all the pieces. But, we were going to launch last week. And then we were like, oh, wait, what customer service? Like maybe we should have someone have some answers if what happens if your box doesn't get there, like literal, very rudimentary things or just inventory questions. And now FedEx has decided they're not doing 2-day over the next couple months. Like from November to January, they're not doing 2-day. So now we're like, what are we supposed to do about that? So yeah, I mean, the goal would really have been to have had this figured out. But you're right. Going into election and, holiday, we're sort of like, when is the right time to get this out into the world? And when do we want to run ads? And, how do we want to kind of do this launch? Let's say we didn't have this whole other business. We were just D2C. You could make the argument for waiting.
Some businesses can't because that's their only revenue.
Right.
So they have to be in it and they're overpaying. And what we find more often than not, Zach behind the camera and I do consulting on the digital side.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, again, I'm a broken record with binary, like they just figured out direct to consumer. Maybe they found an agency and that's humming. And then they get into Target or they get into
Right.
Walmart. And sometimes the growth agencies are like, I don't touch that because that's going to eat into ROAS. I don't do
Right.
retail velocity support. I'm all about ROI on your
Right.
website. And then they're like, well, who's gonna do that? I have this constantly where I'm doing RFPs, and they're like, oh yeah, we haven't thought about that retail velocity support. And they're like, I love that you even know what that term means, because a lot of agencies have never even heard that before. What should we be doing there? And I'm like, of course you need to support the key stores and doors and do all this. So I think like on every single moment, while maybe you're firing staff and you're dealing with all these headaches, every day you're learning direct to consumer versus retail versus Amazon versus I need an Amazon agency. Like,
I know.
And every day,
Instacart ads just got thrown in there. I mean, I didn't know what ROAS was until like 2 months ago. But I think the thing that, and going, it's interesting because you said something about like my sort of education piece. I think one of the things that you learn when you have the privilege of getting like a degree, like a master's degree, right, is that not only is anything not binary, but everything is totally like synergistic, right? Like all of these things work together, similar to sort of what we were talking about with, you know, the retail supporting the direct to consumer. I think all the lessons that you're learning in one area, you can absolutely apply to another. And they all end up sort of creating this, you know, the story of the brand, and they all have to work together, and they all have to be sort of aligned in the fundamentals of who you are and, you know, what problem you're solving. And all of these things are just sort of channels of sales or marketing, but they're not strategies in and of themselves.
Right.
You know, the strategy has to be like the core of why you exist. And all of these other things are just ways to sort of manifest that.
Right.
You know?
I think, yeah, you know, I think most brands are starting at the tactical level rather than strategies, and they're not leveling up to the goals. I always say business drives social, or any of these things, not the other way around.
Right.
What is your core? Where can you win? Why do you exist? Then what are the strategies?
Right.
Then what are the tactics? And I think a lot of brands flip it.
Yeah, well, because money's been cheap, right? And anyone can start a company. And like you said, you can Google how to get any product you want made pretty much anywhere. And there are all these design agencies that are more than happy to make you a really groovy looking package that looks like a lot of other really groovy looking packages. And, you know, I sound kind of negative on it, but I think that there really is a reckoning. And I'm almost sort of, I feel like people have been misled into thinking that it's actually a lot easier than it is.
It's the hardest.
And I feel like it's actually not that hard to even get to like 1 million in sales. But that 1 million to 5 and that 5 to 10, and then, you know, so, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's some good stuff. And I want to talk about your podcast for a second. You're my first podcast guest. If I said that right.
Yes.
And I think you started in 2018.
I did.
Is that right?
We started in July 2018 when we were on 14 New York City Whole Foods shelves.
Amazing. Yeah. So why?
You know, 2 reasons. One was I wanted to learn everything that I could. And I'm fortunate that I knew a lot of people in the food industry and adjacently a lot of people in CPG. So I got to ask people all the questions that I had. And I wanted them recorded. And mostly I wanted other founders who weren't quite as fortunate as I was to have access to that information, because I knew it was a little insidery. You know, even the acronyms, like what the hell? And every different retailer has different acronyms for the same acronyms. It's all just craziness, right? Totally. So there's like a little bit of an opacity to the whole thing that just doesn't need to be there. And, you know, my thought was, if I can save other founders like a couple months and a couple of headaches and a couple $1,000s, and, you know, also candidly, like if you call someone randomly and you're sort of like, hey, can I just talk to you for a half an hour, versus like, hi, I have a podcast with 60,000, you know, active listeners. Like, do you want to come on? You know, it's a different ask, you know? Yeah. So those 2 things.
100%. I was talking with Mark Samuel, who's been doing these Let's Eat video vlog things on LinkedIn, and he's like, you know, am I doing it right? I'm doing these. What am I doing it for? And I felt like Yoda. I was like,
yeah.
How much have you learned?
Yeah.
And he's like,
So
Tons.
much.
And I'm like, yeah, this is like MBA.
Totally.
This is, and I have young people talk to me a lot right now, like, should I go back and get an MBA? And I'm like, for
Right.
what? What's the
I
next
know.
step?
Yeah.
This is a crash course MBA. If this is the business that you want to be in, you can
Totally.
ask, you get a high hit rate of yeses,
Yep.
and ask the questions that you want to have asked, and you get a direct answer from somebody who's done it.
Totally. And you get different, I love doing the research too. Like, I don't know if you enjoy that part as much as I do, but I didn't know anything about my guest yesterday. I actually got, I'm getting incoming pitches, which is now kind of fun because I'm like, I don't know who's spending their PR money on pitching me,
Right.
but like
You're
you
big
could just
time.
text me. Like, I'm not,
Right.
there's no big pitch to be done.
Right.
But anyway, I didn't really know anything. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is a CBD brand that is in beauty, drug, and sprouts, right? Like, I don't know that there are many other brands. Like, how'd they do that? What's the secret there? And then learning about like why they name themselves what they name themselves. And every single person, and I try not to have only founders because we are very full of ourselves in a lot of ways and we pontificate a lot. So I try to have like, what's the difference between a C Corp and an LLC? Because I want to know, because people are asking me and like, I have no idea, And so I think learning is just the most fun,
Right. It's very useful. I'd love to get on your podcast at some point.
You
So
will be on
hopefully
my
you will
podcast at
entertain.
some
I'll have my
point.
PR people contact you.
Yes, have your people call my people.
But it's a great show. And I was saying to you before, it's very similar to the reason we started this one, which is the trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
and the learnings that come, the good and the bad. So for anybody who hasn't listened to your podcast, I highly recommend it. We'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome.
You want to give a plug for it?
No, I just wanted to say it's like, I don't know if it's kind of the same reason I started the cooking school. There are all these beautiful cookbooks out there and there are all these amazing cooking shows and they always leave you feeling kind of like a loser because what you're making doesn't look like what's on the cover of Bone App, right? So, and it's similar, like there are all these podcasts about like amazing stories and they're like, yeah, that was a really hard 6 years where I lived on my friend's couch and I was in major debt. But like you said, how that story ends. And so it's all kind of like amazing and good. I just like that doesn't end up necessarily helping people. It's just making them feel a little bit worse about themselves.
Totally. And when we were coming up, entrepreneur was like loser. It's like, oh,
Right.
You're especially living in New York.
Right.
You're not in finance. You
Right.
own businesses,
Right.
and 4 of them have flopped.
Right.
You're a loser, shyster.
Right.
And now it's like a badge of honor. And so we hear about the ones that made it.
Yeah.
But so many have missed it, and they're not necessarily bad people. They just, for whatever reason, weren't,
Right. I don't know. I feel like it's like film school was in the 90s what entrepreneurship is now. And there's this like weird sort of founder worshiping going on where no one's really giving them the honest story necessarily. And again, I really didn't set out to sort of dissuade anyone. I mean, I did a brick and mortar cooking school that had no reason to succeed other than the fact that it did, And similarly, like the numbers in this game are very low. But there are really big red flags. And there are some just like building a brick and mortar, there are some rules that are fundamental that no matter if you have the best cookie or chip or, sauce in the world, if you don't adhere to them, you're going to screw yourself at some point, So don't make those mistakes.
Right. And I would again say that in order to find some of those mistakes, the best place to look are podcasts like yours. Like
I think so.
You're getting a crash course from like Shaolin warriors who have done it. And a lot of times the best stories actually are from the misses.
Yeah.
Right. So now I want to talk about you're a mother of 5. I'm also the youngest of 5. I talked to you about that the first time we spoke. And we wanted to like share some stories here. So how is it being mother of 5 and an entrepreneur running all these businesses? What's like, what would you say about that?
A couple things. One is I had my kids very early and then I built my career. So I feel very fortunate. By the time I opened the cooking school, my youngest was in kindergarten full time. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. And, again, super, super fortunate to have had that. I do think that them seeing me build something from scratch has changed their lives and has changed our dynamic a lot. And I'm really happy, for that. I also feel like one of my more sort of like my bigger named investors in my seed round, her guy that I had to go through, like we were talking about, the guy, the gatekeeper. He, before we even had a conversation, he was like, I learned very early that if you are going to put your money on someone, it's going to be a mom with a lot of kids. So you don't have to do a lot of convincing for me, just letting you know ahead of time. So I think it's been a huge asset. I think that I've learned to be a better communicator with my kids through building the business. I think I've learned to be a better manager through being a mother. Again, I think they're totally intertwined. And as I kind of grow and learn in one area of my life, I definitely take those lessons into the other.
Yeah, I would say, and I don't have 5 kids, I have 2, but I think when you're running a business with employees, running a family, it is amazing, right? It's the best thing in the world, but there's a lot of stress that comes with it, and a lot of hard days, and so there's a parallel there because you have to be so committed to the greater cause. Obviously, people leave, people walk away, and from both things, and that's terrible, but there's a lot of just lessons you can learn from it, especially at the scale 5 in New York City.
And I think what you said about, a wartime general versus not, I think you can learn how to mitigate those things before they happen, right? So what are the things that cause the fights? Hands down, a miscommunication, right? Whether it's in your business life or in your personal life, right? I thought you were taking the kids to school. I thought you were taking the kids to school. And then all of a sudden it's, you don't trust me and value me. And, you don't know what I do all day. Like, these things get, so how do you create, I literally took, the first time I heard the expression scope of work from like an outside service provider, I started applying it to my life. And I actually made a scope of work for myself in my house, and all of my kids had scopes of works also. So there wasn't any misunderstanding. Like if you didn't do something you were supposed to do, it was clear and it was like rectifiable, but it wasn't because we were unclear of what I was supposed to be doing or you were supposed to be doing. And that's changed everything, Clear communication, not being passive aggressive, saying what you mean, coming at it with empathy, all of those things are things that I think you learn when you're managing a lot of people. You also learn when you're in a big family. It's a little more intuitive probably.
Totally.
But I am sort of psyched that you're the youngest of the 5 because as I said, my youngest of my 5, like everyone loves him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he can do no wrong.
Yeah, we grow up to be the best.
You do
ultimately.
grow up. You grow up to definitely think you're the best.
That's actually right. That's definitely not wrong. I think that's a really good lesson that obviously people aren't going to run out and go have 5 kids tomorrow and then start there. It's not the ideal path, but it is actually a good path for these kind of learnings. I definitely have to get that scope of work from you for my kids because I have my daughter just turned 13 yesterday.
Contracts are good.
I got to get some contracts. We just got a dog. We're definitely not following our contracts.
And they're signed and they're on the kitchen bulletin board.
I need that.
Yeah.
That's for me. That's what I got out of today's conversation.
Great.
I'm going to take that with me.
I'm glad I could help.
So as we wrap up, I just want people to know sort of where do they find you? What's your podcast called? Where do they find it? Your website? Awesome. How do people find you outside of this talk?
They don't. No, kidding.
Right.
You follow Haven's Kitchen on Instagram. We also are doing these amazing, if I don't say so myself, Pinterest stories that don't disappear after 24 hours. So a bunch of recipes are on Pinterest, which is really cool in video format. Obviously, havenskitchen.com, where you can now order sauce directly, but also we have a ton of recipes and just like ideas. The podcast is called In the Sauce, and you can find it anywhere you find your podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, etc. And me, You don't really want to find me.
No.
Personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Less so.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not true. And I will say, since we've met, it does seem that you know so many people in this business. And I don't know if it just comes from being a good person or just being around for 8 years. But the resume in this industry sticks with you. And I think there's people that people don't like, which I hear about, but you can really feel it when they do. And I think that's a compliment to whatever you're putting out there.
Thank
So
you.
keep doing what you're doing. I'm so happy that
Thanks.
we've
That's
met.
so nice.
This has been our conversation with Allie Cayne. You heard where to find her. And I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. Thanks,
Agreed.
Zach.